Stream is on, so it'll be recorded. So if something really wonderful is said and spoken, you can go back and take a look or share it with your friends. So we pray indeed that that all works and cooperates. I was going to wait for the high sign to make sure it is on, but I do want to tell you that if the conversation goes and you find a good opportunity, I have some superlative gifts and recognitions that I could offer at this time, but we're also joining lunch together. So the superlative gifts could go at the time during lunch too. So I'm going to let that judgment be yours and how responsive you get. And there's a microphone that Brock is going to pass around so that everybody at home can hear you and everybody here can hear you. So you need to speak into the mic. So Brock is going to, how do you want to do this? Kathy, well, let me start with a word of prayer. Kathy does not want the microphone to start with. Clearly, she doesn't. I love the Lord's sense of humor that it was given to you. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Lord God, we bless you and thank you for this opportunity to come and get reunited in the gifts that you've given us through the Camino, the pilgrimage, the Blessed Feet and Faith retreat. We ask, Lord, now that you would guide our conversation. Send your Holy Spirit to guide that we may mine the treasure that you have bestowed upon us, that you've entrusted to us through this retreat, that we can not only treasure it ourselves, but share it with others, that they too may see how you were at work during this retreat. And so we commend this time to you with thankful hearts, and especially for RJ. We thank you that he can come and question us. Bless him and his work, and as he shares so generously his talents and gifts with us this day. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Well, thank you, Pastor. I'll tell you how I got into this, okay? After they got back, I said, you really need to do what we did with my African trip, where I was asked by some parishioners to show the slides, and we had a good time downstairs, that we should do that on this trip, because none of us really knew what you did. And in preparing for this, I think what you're going to discover today is it will call you. When you see where they went, what they saw, it's simply amazing, and it is an amazing calling. I'm going to start with a definition of Camino. Camino is a Spanish word that means road, path, or way. It can be used literally like a street or trail, or metaphorically as a journey or a life path. And then they talk about Camino de Santiago, the famous pilgrimage across Spain, walked by thousands every year. So you know, 40,000 Americans did this last year. 499,000 did it from around the world. And what's interesting about the numbers, if you look at them, is they go up each year. The only time they didn't go up, obviously, was COVID. But other than that, they go up each year, usually by 50,000 people. So it really is quite the calling. I thought maybe we could start, Pastor, with you just giving a quick thumbnail on the actual Camino, the trip, and the few days of walking that you did before we got to the cathedral.
Yeah, the itinerary was a 5-day retreat. That's what we billed, with a few days added on of sightseeing in Madrid. So the beginning of the trip was to fly in together to the original passage into Greater Europe over the Pyrenees. So it began in Saint-Jean, which is a Pied de Port, which means the gateway, right, to or the doorway to the mountain pass. And so we began there and had an agenda of 3 days of walking and having hotels prearranged by an agency who did that for us, because the pastor who I knew that had done this actually arranged their lodging at 2 in the afternoon by cell phone, calling ahead and maybe wandering into one of the pensions. So I was like, it's not for me. I need the gentleman's version if I'm going to lead this retreat. So we prearranged, so 3 days of walking, and that would only take us to Pamplona, which is still, was a 7-hour drive, and I don't know how many miles, from Pamplona to the cathedral. And many people walk this, but for us, on a limited time frame, we rented a car. And we drove then a 7.5, 8-hour drive that turned out to be very nice. We had no idea exactly how that would go. And we wound up in Santiago at the cathedral for another 2 days of the retreat. There we did a tour of the coast so that we could see where St. James actually, allegedly by historical tradition, was brought into Seaport and then carried by land further inland to Santiago, which bears his name. And then we concluded there in Santiago the last day before our sightseeing. Some went off to Portugal. Others went to Madrid, and we did sightseeing freely and independent of the retreat. But the retreat closed on the 5th day in Santiago with, retreat things.
Sounds good. I want to start, I hope you don't mind, Maria, with you. The reason I want to start with her is each wrote a blurb, that's what I'll call it, about the trip. Yours really was a calling. It was almost like you were going home, and spiritually and otherwise. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think you are right. It was a calling. For years, my aunt, you can tell I don't use a microphone that often.
Keep it close to your face.
So for years, my aunt was trying to get me to go to Spain because my grandfather is actually from Galicia, where the cathedral is. I mean, he was born like 30 minutes away from there. And for some reason, I never got to go. And then Pastor a year ago started talking about this retreat, and I just knew I was going to go. It was God calling me. It was the country calling me. It was a spiritual thing. And I'm not a hiker. I said, how am I going to do this? I've never hiked. All these are expert hikers. I'm not. I had, one mountain that they took me up. I tripped over a rock, and I said, oh, my God, how am I going to do this? But I figured I would know once I was there what I was meant to do. And I was meant. What was that?
You were meant to take a taxi.
Yes, I was meant to take taxis. I was meant to see a little bit of what I thought heaven would look like when I was on that mountain for that short time that I was on that mountain. And I looked out into the valleys and saw the green, and I felt if I held my hand all the way up, I could touch the sky. And it was a wonderful feeling. And just the idea that people from all over the world were there. Catholics, Lutherans, Jewish, from every part of the world. And we were all together. Isn't that like heaven?
Yes.
We would all be together as one.
Yeah.
So it was a wonderful experience.
That sounds good. I want to talk a little bit about that, and maybe I could go with you next. Tell us your name.
Hi, for anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Rebecca.
Rebecca, nice to see you. Peace is often associated with, when I read of the Camino, peace, and I understand at the beginning of the trip, there was no speaking. And how did that go?
Yeah, definitely when we first had the challenge of, all right, we're going to spend the next hour or two not talking, being in nature, really I found to enjoy it, be more connected in God. The first day we started, we had a moment of rest before we started the trip, a day of Sabbath. And for me, that was really special to have that day to clear my mind, be in focus of the venture, the trail, everything that was to come. And so to have like the start of our trip, be in that silence, being connected to God really allowed us to focus and think through how God was going to work in each and every one of us throughout our journey.
Was the pastor able to keep quiet?
We all did a great job being focused, yes.
That's very good. That's excellent. So peace is a word that really is associated with it, whether you were quiet or not along the way.
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, the trip is 482 miles. If you do the entire French way, it's 482 miles. So you really had quite the trek. I'm going to have you each introduce yourself as we pass the mic so people know who you are. So I'm going to come over and go ahead.
Hi, my name is Greg Kincaid.
Greg. Tell us a little bit about what you saw along the way, because at the end, you came to the giant cathedral, but it looked to me like along the way, you saw a lot of other spiritual things. I'll put it that way.
Driving into Saint Jean de Port, you start with, it's just mountains surrounding you. So they actually point out to us, oh, you're going to be hiking up this huge mountain, which makes around here look like small, tiny anthills. But that's what we started off with, was going up this common like farm road, and you're just seeing the surrounding mountains. And eventually, as you get higher up, you see even further out. We even see like the Pyrenees and the far distance, and it just feels like you're on top of the world.
Have you ever seen anything like it in your life?
Not like that. And you just stand there in awe in the creation around you. And especially with the great weather, it was a bright, sunny day. It wasn't too hot, so you're just enjoying it, just taking it all in. It felt like a 360 view of everything around you.
And were all 3 days like that? You had nice weather each three? No. Okay, because I saw that raincoats and parkas, or, there was a fellow who was a guide, and I looked at it on YouTube, and the first thing he did, his name was Rico, is bring out a parka. First thing he did.
Yeah, the second day started out a little bit more cloudier, and so we're like, all right, let's get our rain jackets ready. And that's when I realized that mine was sitting very comfortably back in my house.
Okay.
Thankfully.
And it wasn't like Disney where you could buy one the moment it starts to rain?
I was in the middle of the path, the dirt path, so thankfully Cindy and Tom had an extra one. I was just like, okay. And then that was like a downpour on the second day. Yeah, it was hailing too. I also thought it was going to be flatter, so I didn't have like my hiking shoes on. I had like thicker, flat, smooth soles, which is not helpful going downhill in like rocky trench terrain. So there were a few times, Pastor saw it a lot, I would slip around.
Did you get guidance before you left on what might be the right apparel, or you just went on your merry way?
It wasn't like you knew what the path was going to look like. I just had two different type of shoes. I had the more hiking type, and then like a thicker sole type for like flatter, just general walking. Okay. And I thought it was going to be like that, and I was sorely mistaken. So.
Yeah. But Cindy and Tom came to your rescue with a parka, an extra parka.
Yeah.
I want to tell you something, okay? In all the trips that I take with my listeners, there's one every year. If they're medical people with you, they are the most prepared people on the face of the earth. Really are. So,
I know my dad would be shaking his head because like I'm an Eagle Scout, so it's like I'm supposed to be prepared.
Oh, yeah. No, that is a problem for an Eagle Scout. Okay. Cindy?
Cindy Cockle.
I saw, awe and wonder the most in terms of words used to describe this adventure, this pilgrimage. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the awe and wonder does come from the nature of where we were. So, the Pyrenees particularly, because as we were walking up, like Greg said, you just see these vistas of mountains and valleys, and we walked through animal pastures where we were like right up close to sheep and horses and I think cattle. And then you can just see the mountains, like, and tree. I've written in my journal of a tree that it looked like it wasn't even in the soil. It was just the roots. The roots had gone down, and the tree was actually a little bit elevated. And I thought, as I was looking at that, I thought that tree was so strong and so firmly planted, even though it wasn't like actually sitting on the soil. It was a really weird phenomenon. And I thought of how Christian life is if we've got our roots down deep into God's soil, we are going to be strong. And so I would see things like that along the way, and you would hear other pilgrims, us together. Glenn would say, "Look at that tree! Like, how can anyone not know that God has created all of this?" And just seeing nature in that way was. Gave glory to God and his creation. The little villages, I love the little villages that were on the mountains, you could see in the distance.
Okay, so we'll go to Tom and talk about the villages. We're talking about scenery, beautiful scenery, and God's creation. And I'm with all of you. I look at Earth and I look at what we have on Earth and how it all fits together. And I have people that I work with who believe that it was one cell that decided to swim off and become a this, and another cell swam off to become a that. And I try to reason with them about how God is the great architect and put together something that is just unimaginable how it all came together. But talk about now some of the villages and maybe other people that you ran into, whether they were villagers or from another country or even the U.S.
Yeah, the villages.
Oh, introduce yourself,
Sorry,
please.
Tom Koppel.
Thank you.
So the interesting thing was the villages are like they're old, right? Like a lot of stuff in Europe, these are old places. And the people you would run into at some of these was one of the things that was striking to me was, if we start with the town in France, was the appearance of the people. The young gals you would see, most of them would be dressed, in a dress. It was a lot different than what we see here. These villages all have, there's little spots, gathering spots, little cafes, and this type of thing, where people gather, throughout the day. And that was kind of cool. Pretty much all these places had that. In fact, we didn't, even when we were in, I guess it was a little bit of more modern stuff once we got to Pamplona, but even there was a lot of old stuff. And Santiago, same way. We were staying in sort of the old part, but yeah, people we'd meet. What's that?
A little closer.
Oh, the people. We all experienced this with other pilgrims, and we'd see them repeatedly at these different towns because they were all you're all basically doing the same route, the same amount of mileage each time. So those folks we'd run into them along the way.
And that was 12 to 15 miles per day. Was that right?
Yeah, the first day I think was 18.
Okay.
And then after that was about 12, 13. That's correct.
Were you used to walking anything remotely close to that length?
Not like that, but I do a lot of walking and stuff. So, yeah, the whole thing it's typically that route we did. It's 30, 35 days walk.
Yeah, the entire route.
That route.
Yes.
That route.
Yeah.
But the record is, I think it's a little under 7 days.
Wow. You talk about power walking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
Was there one particular village that stood out to you?
Probably the first one.
Okay. Which it was the French town.
The French town.
Okay. I am going to get to some questions about James here in a second. First, let's go to the pastor. Okay. And God really talked to you day one. I mean, in terms of the trip and what you were to face. And I think a message that was sent to you about that.
Yeah. I mean, I ended up with the last thing I imagined was having knee pain. The grade was so steep, and I brought 2 pairs of shoes because I was having shoe problems with my feet. Never had a knee problem. So I chose the most comfortable worn shoes, which was my mistake, I guess, because it didn't support me with the steep climb. And after about 4 or 5 hours, I think is when I finally had this irreversible knee pain. And by that time, Maria had already called the first taxi to get off the mountain. And so I was thinking, oh, dear Lord, my destiny, I'm going to be in the taxi with Maria. Lord, so that just made me even more tense. And so I realized that there was nothing that I could do to reverse that. And even at that point, we were coming to a rest spot, and I thought I can at least make it there and wait for the taxi. And it was very upsetting to me because I thought, but then I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to be the chaplain of this experience. And so if I have to be at the gate welcoming people into town from here on in with Maria by my side, so be it. So I tried that, but it didn't work really well. I kept praying for, healing. And so it's just so surprised by the whole thing. And also with the cloud of feeling like this was my celebration of recovery for my heart surgery, how could this be, that I now can't do this? So that night, we had a physician with us who said, go for the Advil. Go strong. It won't hurt you. Go, go, go. And then we had this bear grease that we put on my knee to help, also known as Tiger Balm. And so I just went to bed trusting that maybe by chance, possibly, I could walk the next morning. I woke up the next morning, took another dose of Advil, and virtually had no pain. And started the walk, and
Amen.
The rest is history. And so the take-home message for me, really was remembering not to overplan, over-expect, trust that you're living in the present. You don't always know, except the ultimate future is in God's hands, but you don't always know what's going to happen the next hour or two, or when you sleep overnight in a hotel, drugged up and having Tiger Balm. So thanks be to God. And so it was a real reminder that I really am not in charge, and it's okay that I'm not in charge.
But the other message I thought that I clearly read in what you wrote was the fellow that had the heart attack sent a message as well because of your concern of just getting over your own heart situation.
Yeah, I definitely had anxiety over that, especially when the helicopter flew over with him or picking him up. I was like, ooh, that could be me,
And he was traveling the elevation. In other words, he was a hiker when this happened.
He was just a little bit ahead of us, and that was before my knee pain started. I hadn't thought about it, but maybe that caused my knee pain. I don't know, Yeah, it was before that.
Hi there. Yeah. That could be accurate.
Yeah,
there you go. The Lord works in mysterious ways.
Because, they all said they had more climb where I bailed out and got in the taxi with Maria. No, I wasn't with Maria. The taxi came back for me. They had quite a bit of climb after I bailed out at the Virgin, and then they went on up to the cross, and then you started downhill, right, after the cross? So, yeah, there was quite a bit more to go.
Okay.
Excuse me, what did Glenn say? Because we couldn't all hear.
Okay, say it again, Glenn.
Maybe God gave him the knee pain to prevent him from having a heart attack.
And getting in the helicopter.
And getting in the helicopter, yeah.
Is that mic not loud enough? Okay. All right, so I'll have you introduce yourself now.
I'm Judy Engel, Pastor Roger's sister. So I will tell you, in connection with that pain that Roger was having, his older sister was watching and saying, ha, 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 I'm making it, and you're not.
Yes, yes, yes.
I even tried to help him do some stretches and different things to help his knee along the way so he could continue.
So in other words, when he was healed the next day, it was as a result of you. Your help and the Lord, of
And
course.
I paid for that because I couldn't go the next day.
Oh my, oh my.
I went the whole day, the first day, and as everybody said, it was uphill, uphill. It was 13 miles of continuous uphill. Never did it level off, never did it settle down. It was constant uphill. I am a hiker, have done lots of hiking, but never did the 16 miles in one day. So my big thing is going downhill, not only does it hurt, but it doesn't hold. So my knee is pretty well unforgiving once I get past 10 miles. So I paid for the ha beating you, little brother.
So did you take off the next day, and how did that work? You didn't do leg number 2?
I did not do leg number 2 or 3. Usually I'm so determined I would never give that up, but I realize as I am getting a little older that it is so much more to recover. And if I had more downhill, I was probably going to hurt myself before I would stop. So it wasn't wise for me to go on. So I got to spend the day with Maria. And I got to go on the taxi.
Well,
Twice.
well, what was that like, though? I imagine you two still, even though in a taxi, got to see some remarkable sights. Did the taxi basically follow the same route?
Oh, no.
No. Okay.
Not exactly.
Because they are walking paths.
They are walking paths. Now, in one section, we could see the trail, and we would look for them the first day to see if we could happen to see where they were crossing over. It's sort of like the Appalachian Trail crosses over roads and things like that. It does do that in places. We did not get to see them, but we did see countryside and the farm and stuff, but more likely ours was go find the next hotel, and thanks to Maria understanding the language, and things were a little confused between the owners of the hotel, and had she not been there, it would have been a disaster. So that took a little bit to clarify why they were confused and sending us to some other hotel that wasn't anything
Part of
to
your
do.
deal. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was nice, and I got to know Maria. We had a good time, going around, and then our big thing was being able to greet everyone when they came back in. And at the end of the third day, we kept watching. We're standing on the corner watching all the roads in Pamplona, looking for them to come in and looking for them to come in and greet them. And they made it. So.
But while you were there, you did get a chance to run with the bulls.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, how about you got a chance to do the next couple of legs? How did they differ from going uphill all that time?
My name's Kevin Engel. Judy's my wife. We had done a lot of research, Judy and I, looking into the trail. She said we are hikers, and we wanted to get to know as much about this hike as we could. Because day one, if you've ever been to the Grand Canyon, the elevation, if you're at the bottom of the Grand Canyon and hike out, is just a little bit more than what we did on day one of our hike.
Wow.
It's the toughest day hike of the Camino de Santiago. But as we looked at days 2 and 3, it was very deceiving because we had these little charts that we had gotten when we checked in the day before we started the hike, and it was a little graph, a line graph. Day 2 and 3 were mostly downhill, a little bit up, and then mostly downhill. It did not describe that accurately at all because they were very challenging, especially on day 2, as Greg said, when it rained. The last several miles of the hike were like walking down a dry riverbed with exposed rocks that were on an angle, and it was very, very treacherous is the best word I can come up with, and I was so glad that Judy was not hiking on day 2 because that would have killed her. And I got to give a lot of credit to Kathy and Becca because the determination on their faces to make it through this treacherous stretch, I applaud them because it was very nasty, and there were people ahead of us who had fallen, we had heard, and got pretty banged up. So we would see those two just so focused on the trail. And like I said, I was so glad Judy was not there that day to do it. It was bad. It was nasty. Much tougher than anticipated.
It sounds it. And in reading about it, it didn't sound that it was that tough during those segments. But
right. We knew day one was a challenge, and we thought once we get past day one, it's mostly downhill according to this little graph.
Yeah.
A little bit of up, but it was much tougher than advertised for those next 2 days. Yes.
how much rain did you get during the trip?
It was, on day 2, it was mostly just the last few hours, but of course during the most challenging part of the hike of those days. So yeah, Roger and I were in the lead on day 2 for a while, and I think we put on our rain gear and we stepped out, and it's when it started to hail.
Oh.
And Roger said, why don't we go back? Because we'd only gone about 100 yards. So we went back to the cover of the woods, and then everybody else started showing up as well. So we all congregated there, and from the last several miles, we all went together. But it was not a fun part of the hike for sure.
It was like a creek. It wasn't dry.
Well, right. Yes,
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And it was
Wow.
it was like this, and you were carefully finding your way.
It sounds like the Lord wanted to provide the real experience for you. And I understand it rains a lot, so I imagine a lot of the pilgrims really face that along the way.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
The best part of that was when it was lightning. It was storming and lightning, and Pastor's like, "Come here under the trees where we'll be safe." And we were like, "Yeah, let's go under trees during a lightning storm."
You weren't an Eagle Scout, were you?
In my defense, that was to escape the hail. The
Okay,
lightning was way away, but the hail, because we didn't know how big that was going to be, so the leaves would break the hail. That was what I was talking about.
Here, hold this golf umbrella.
We made sure that we were well away from Pastor from that one. We were like trying to. He gets struck by
The lightning rod of the trip. So, hi there.
Hi, Kathy Bernadette.
Hi, Kathy. So let's talk a little bit about along the way and how you felt spiritually. I know that you took the sacrament along the way. Is that right? Oh, you did not. Oh, okay. I thought you did. But you're headed on the path of St. James. When did all that hit you? From the beginning, or not until you really got through to the cathedral?
All the way. I mean, that's why we're there. You travel as a pilgrim to Santiago, where St. James' bones purportedly are. So yeah, and you have very much a sense, because it's Europe, it's old, that people have been doing this for thousands of years, for that very reason. So yeah, it's a very religious, for me it was a very religious experience.
Did you imagine St. James doing this, traveling this same path?
I don't think he did. He was beheaded in Jerusalem, and they
Oh.
put him in a boat, and then they came around to Spain, and that's how he ended up in Santiago.
That's interesting. I didn't, in everything that I, went through, I didn't realize that he didn't make the trip himself. I know that the Camino had been around years before. They say that they were trading routes that were used by various groups, including Arabs, to get goods here and there. So the trails have been around literally forever. But I didn't realize that James was not on it. Interesting. So what did you, first, I'll have you introduce yourself, Michelle.
I'm Michelle Elliott.
What did you learn about St. James that you didn't know?
I know, that's a tough question.
It is a tough one. Yeah. What's that?
I just wanted to talk about all the people I met on the trail.
Well, okay. Well, you can do that. You can do
sorry.
that. No, listen,
Yeah.
this forum is pretty easy.
Yeah.
In that, how are we doing time-wise?
It's 54.
Okay. This forum is pretty easy because what I really wanted to do is go through some of the things on the trip and then get your thoughts. So we can start with that, and along the way, I'm sure we'll get some thoughts on St. James, particularly seeing, his remains. I've had a chance to do that with St. Francis of Assisi and some others in my travels, and it is really a moving thing. But talk about the people. I think that's wonderful.
Well, first the thing that just came to my mind is how much I fell in love with this group of people. And just a couple weeks ago, I was thinking, I wish we could all go again somewhere together. We just really bonded, and they're just such lovely people. And the camaraderie of working together, especially that second day. Well, the first day, trying to get each other up the hill, and then the second day, trying to survive the downhill. And then also the people from around the world that we met. You all know me, I'm a hugger. I fell in love with so many people on that trail. We met this German guy the very first day. I took his picture.
Was he Lutheran? Had to be if he's German.
I don't know, but we did talk to another German guy at a cafe. But this first guy, it's just, God worked so powerfully in all these people, just putting them in our paths. But it's funny, when I looked at my pictures, he was walking up the hill behind Becca and Greg before we met him. So he's in some of my pictures, just randomly. But we met him. I took his picture because he was alone, a solo traveler. And then we ran into him in a cafe. And he was just one of many people from Chile, Paris, Barcelona, Ireland, and we would run into these same people, and so you became immediate family. So it really spoke to, Cindy was the one who pointed out, this is like heaven, when all nations and peoples and tribes and tongues will come together. And so my heart's just so full thinking about this group in particular, and then just these strangers that I met from around the world, and just so briefly we encountered them, but the connection was really real and genuine. And so, yeah. So that's
Was
what I
the
wanted to share.
calling, do you think, the same for all? Did you talk about the calling? Why you did this trip? Why did you come here and do the Camino?
I would love to give a beautiful, flowery answer, but for myself, no, because unfortunately we're on a mission. We got 18 miles, 13 miles, and so you just would have these really brief encounters. And how are you doing? Where's the water and bathroom? So it was more just fleeting connections. I would have loved to have spent more time chatting, but so thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Glenn Elliott.
What called you to this trip? Why did you decide I need to make this pilgrimage?
Oh, there were several things. At first, it was brought to our attention by my daughter Gracie, who brought it home, and I was thinking, maybe we could get her to do this. That would be, and she didn't want to have anything to do with it. And she did not want to do it. And so then I was saying to Michelle, I'm like, maybe we should do it. And the thing that I really thought would be incredible about it is I love history. I love seeing things that were made in the past and appreciate what came before us. And so I thought this would be really neat, to see these churches and these villages and, so, and there was the spiritual part of it, but I'm not Catholic, so I don't think of it in the sense that I'm making a pilgrimage to that. I did appreciate it, but it wasn't the calling from a Catholic standpoint of I'm being a pilgrim to go see in fact, we didn't even go see it. We didn't go in. Michelle and I did not go into the cathedral, not because of that, it just didn't work out. So my calling was, and then I also thought, it'll be challenging and I can see God's creation, and I did. It was amazing, all the things that you didn't even expect. I remember talking to Tom, and we were in Saint Jean, And there's this like beech tree, and this thing is hundreds of years old, and I'm just like, look at that, Tom, that's so cool. And that's when I realized Tom was a geek like me when it came to plants and stuff. So we were like look at that, that's a boxwood. And we were like walking around, and people were like, man, they're nuts back there, look at them. And then I remember, Tom, again, the same thing with the nature, and he's a fly fisherman, and which is, I think, fascinating when I talked to him about it. But we were looking at the streams, and we came across this one stream where we were walking. We had like these, I don't know, concrete steps that went across, and Tom and I are both looking down like, wow, look at that. Look at the substrate there. That is really awesome, you know? And so there was like looking at the little things that God creates, and also the big things that God creates, but also what God creates through man, the 2,000-year-old bridges that were like in several villages that are still there, that were built by the Romans. And, so you just think, so it was a lot of it was the history and the nature. But I'm with Michelle. I thought it was really cool to meet these different people from around the world. I'm a little more cynical as far as I don't think the most of them take this trip out of any kind of religious reason. I think a lot of them they have their vacation, they're Europeans, and this is a hiking the Appalachian Trail. But I think the good thing about that is I think God, he puts them there, and then they get around people that are there for reasons that they want to appreciate the spiritual aspect of it and appreciate that. So I think he brings them there, and they think they're going on a hike, and I think they find out a lot more that it's not just another hike. Yeah. And so, but there were times where it was amazing. We saw the cross at the top of the mountains, and there was, I guess, peregrine falcons, and they were like circling around the cross, and it was so cool. We got pictures. We're like, wow. We were looking at these birds, and all of a sudden they were circling around the cross, and we're like, wow, that's definitely God right there. He's, So anyway, I think I'm rambling.
You had
Well,
an
no.
invitation to surrender or something at that cross.
Right.
And the kind of embellishment of the peregrine falcon is how the Spanish call a pilgrim, peregrino. And I don't know who got the name first. Probably the peregrino was the pilgrim, and the falcon got the name because the falcon doesn't have a territory. So I'm curious about the surrender. You talk about the spiritual piece. The surrender at the cross, was that meaningful for anyone? Did that tie into your spiritual journey?
Yeah, well, and it was absolutely. You could see crosses everywhere too. I mean, in the villages, there were crosses everywhere, and I love seeing a cross. I love seeing a cross more than I love seeing the American flag, and I really love seeing the American flag. So, there was definitely, we were walking, we were on the mountains, and there were like treeless mountains. And there was these 3 incredibly beautiful trees lined up, and I took a picture of them. I'm like, look, that's the Trinity right there. Like, it was like nowhere around. There's no trees, and there's 3. So like there were a lot of that.
Was there emotion involved for any of you in terms of crying? And I must confess that I get emotional at the drop of a hat, sometimes on the air. And but I would imagine that I would have done some crying on this trip, I would think.
Actually, I did. On our tour to Finisterre, the edge of the world, there was a point when the tour bus turned, and I don't remember what spot it was, but all I did was cry and cry and cry. And I didn't know why, and I had to wonder, are my ancestors from here? I didn't know what was going on. And then further down, I stopped. Just stopped for no reason at all. But I do want to add, now this is different from this, when you said the calling. For me, the calling was that here's a disciple, an apostle of Jesus, who supposedly his remains are in that cathedral. Why wouldn't you want to go? This apostle walked with Jesus, talked with Jesus, whether you're a Catholic or not. But he's still calling people. That cathedral was packed, and they all went to pass by where his remains are. So he's still evangelizing. He is bringing people there. And that's what brought me there.
Yeah.
That was my goal. And when I didn't do that hike up the Pyrenees, it was Glenn who said, Maria, how are you going to do the rest of this hike when you've never hiked? And that's why I got a taxi, thanks to you, because who knows, I might not have made it.
Oh, we wouldn't have left you behind.
I know. You would have to tie a rope around me. But yes, that's the calling, that there's an apostle's bones, whether it's true or not. But it's still bringing everybody that went on that hike for whatever reason, for physical, spiritual, but they end up in that cathedral.
No, and I agree with what Glenn said earlier. I feel that way with a lot of different opportunities where you're brought to Christ and you don't even know it. Not necessarily we who believe, but you're brought to Christ and you don't even know it. That's why, I have this funny thing where I know some of you will think it's crazy. I say, and Bonnie, looks at me like I'm nuts. I say, do you think Jesus Christ ate spaghetti? Now, that might sound like a wild question, but you have no idea who I ask it to. Co-workers and people like that. And even though it's goofy, we're talking about Jesus Christ. We're talking about Jesus Christ, and that's my aim. And I think people are brought to Christ and they don't even know it.
RJ, I'm a crier too. I cry during when my wife and I watch Hallmark movies. So
I'm not quite there yet, but I'll let you know.
I'll teach you.
All right.
At the end of when we got to Santiago, I believe it's each day, they have what they call a hiker's mass or service. And we thought it was, I think, one day, but it turned out when we went to Finisterre on our way back from the tour that day, the tour guide said, oh, it's at like 7:30 tonight or whatever. So most of us are able to get to this hiker's mass. It's to celebrate the hikers who have come to Santiago, and they start the mass by naming all the various places they've come from when they started. But at the end of the mass, they have this, what I call an incenser, a bota fumero, I believe is the name. And this thing literally weighs about 120 pounds. It's about this big, and it takes 8 men to pull on the ropes, and this thing swings back and forth through the cathedral. And I don't know if the guy was singing at the time, but the guy who began the service, it was like listening to the voice of God. This guy had an amazing voice. But they swing this thing back and forth, and the incense is coming out. And I am not Catholic, but I found it very impactful to me just to watch this, because everyone knows that they're going to do this. In fact, the guy in front of me who was not in our group kept saying to somebody in the church, is it going to happen now? Is it going to happen now? And finally, at the end of the service, it happened. And it was just amazing to watch this as the music's playing in this Bota Fumero, this giant incenser, is swinging back and forth across the cathedral. It was emotional for me. I probably got a tear.
I could see where you would.
Yeah. I would just interject to that same point that if the celebration is of what God has done to bring the pilgrims there, and what God is doing, the people that were named were the people who contributed finances to make the cathedral work for the giant jumbo incenser. And so it's all to the glory of God, and recognizing that he is one that made it possible She's giving you the 5-minute
Oh, she was
warning.
giving me the 5-minute warning. How did the remains of St. James really affect any? Does anybody want to comment on, going, viewing and what came over you at that particular moment?
That, to me, it was just fascinating because just standing there and just seeing that this is one of the apostles, I just had a moment of reflection, just silence and just taking it in. And just as the church was beautiful, it was just a moment of awe and just, wonder, just like this person was more than 2,000 years old, and that was my take on it.
And has the trip caused any of you to look into James more and see what he was about? Yeah, Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, I did before, because initially I was under the impression that he had walked some of these same areas, which I thought, oh, that'd be cool to walk in a place where, a person that walked with Jesus 2,000 years ago. And then I find out, well, he didn't.
It was the pilgrimage to get to him.
Right, exactly. And so, yeah, I did some, some digging and some research and learned some things that I did not know, which is also, how God works, I guess. But anyway, yeah.
So what's next?
Well, we have 4 minutes. So if somebody from the audience had a burning question, you could offer that, and then we could close in prayer.
It's a comment more than a question. I'm in awe seeing all of you who underwent Navy SEAL training and got high in your spirituality. Congratulations.
That's a great line, and that's about right, too. There's no doubt about it.
Well, it is mind and body. That's why it was called the Blessed Feet and Faith Retreat. And you realize that's our spiritual journey, is both the mind and our faith, or the body and our faith. They are constantly working together and sometimes not working together. They're at odds with each other, but God is still faithful.
Now, this is not part of the pilgrimage necessarily, the extra 3 days you were there, but did you have fun, and did you really enjoy? Some of you who went to Portugal? Did someone? Okay, very good. And any other questions? Okay, Cindy has a question.
How did the remains of St. James come to that cathedral?
Well, there's several theories. So, the theory that we tend to gravitate toward is that after he was beheaded, he was, and I'm going to mention it in my sermon today, actually, that he was shipped around to the ends of the earth of the known world. Of the continent. Even though Ireland and Great Britain were known, this was still considered the ends of the earth, and the gospel would be proclaimed to the ends of the earth. So the church and the believers, out of faith, loaded up parts of his body, not necessarily the whole, and because they divided up relics in that time period. And it was early. It was maybe as early as 400 that they brought him there to a cathedral, and then eventually took him inland to Santiago, which is why we took a bus trip to the end. And when they brought him to Santiago, the church, that is James. Santiago is James. And the cathedral was then built around him. And it's the second largest pilgrimage site in all of the Christian church and Catholicism, the Vatican being number 1, and Santiago being number 2. So that's one of the traditions. There's others, but he was there and unknown until 800. And a monk discovered him, and then the pilgrimages started at 800. So the pilgrimages have been going on for, what does that make it, 1,200 years or more. I guess at 1,300, depending on how you count. So that's one of the theories, but we don't 100% know. And that's why Lutherans are always a little shy on talking about the history of saints because it's extra biblical. And in our worship service, we focus on what we know as the given truth. And so we're sometimes reluctant to dwell on extra biblical things on Sunday morning. But other times, that's all good stuff. And, Luther certainly encouraged us in all of the history and the history of the saints. So.
Sounds good. I think we're probably...
We rise, and thank you guys for coming, and we'll join together in just I'm looking around to see, you think we could sing the doxology as a praise and thanksgiving to God for the gifts that we have received, and just rejoice in the gifts of our faith, our health, and our salvation, all to the glory and gift and strength of our God. I'm looking over to Gina. RJ, very much for giving
Thank
your
you.
time and talent to us. We so appreciate it.
Thank you all for being here and listening. It was really quite the trip. We missed it, but through you, we know how wonderful it was.
So Pilgrims, if you could help Mindy load up the chairs so that we're ready for late service, she's right there.